provide information in real time to keep this capability. The other element is the mechanism. The mechanism is a way in which we channel the resources of European countries when there is a response. It has been activated 300 times since its creation in 2001 until the end of 2017. In 2017, we activated only 32. In 2017, we activated only 32 times. Lately, for the volcano eruption in Volcán del Fuego in Guatemala, the team was going to arrive on Sunday to integrate the analysis of damage evaluation and to support monitoring the volcano. At the level of civil protection, we have a set. I won't go into detail, but at the end, we're going to go more in depth. This is a set of instruments that allows for us to have these different elements to be prepared. First, I'd say attendance from the scientists. It's a scientific analysis. If we can have the GRC in Italy that anticipates us in terms of problems and provides a pre-analysis, a quick analysis of a phenomenon, an impact in this phenomenon. The other element is our mapping service, emergency mapping service. This is a map of the Dominica area in the airport area, which allowed for us to see until when we could land with planes in this area. We supplement this with other maps that are of a public order. You can see that this is done quickly. This is Volcán del Fuego that integrates different analytical events in face of the country's emergencies. Generally, this is posted on the website. This map system has an advantage. It can be very quick, and it allows to have a first evaluation of the impact. That's the main quality. And it's completely free, and it depends on what the user wants. Any country can activate this, and we should know what we expect from this map. This is an area where the preparations are proper for mapping. If we know it's very sensitive, we can anticipate and ask for this service with advance to accelerate access to these maps. This is one from Portugal that was done, but in another context where we can do mapping thanks to the European Space Agency to have a recovery plan. It takes a bit more time, but it's a service that facilitates recovery. To finish this chapter, this is the activation number that we've seen from the creation. We had activations beyond Europe, and this is 83% of these activities have been focused on responding to forest fires, hurricanes, and floods. The other branch, and it's the humanitarian aid vision. Preparing for disasters is imperative in humanitarian aid. It's within our DNA. And if I may, we were divided in two elements, but the main one is focalized actions that could make a difference And during this week, there was an entire thought about this. After 500 projects, more than 20 years in action, this is a matter of priority. How can we continue and assist this process being efficient and making a difference with this external contribution in our preparation before disasters? This need of communicating and optimizing and lobbying is connected to the different collection of evidence. It's based on 3 principles and 1 question. The perspective of experts, the perspective of beneficiaries, those who are at risk, and the perspective of learning after a crisis. And after that, the question, are we making a difference with this aid or with this action or not? And if we ask ourselves our question, the first responder are the ones that can answer this. It will never be the European Union nor the partners that are supporting. At the end, I wanted to finish this innovative side. We've realized that in our preparation before disasters, the preparation for recovery is a key element, and that's why we've seen that there's different elements that are key for this, integrating the private sector, trying to connect with social protection systems, reducing quick recovery or the time for quick recovery, and the other element is continuing with our means of sustenance. Anticipating these needs is also a part of these preparations, and that I wanted to end with this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our last panel members, Alexis and Joslan. I would like to continue handing the floor to Joslan. Maybe you can tell us a bit about a practical experience. I understand that Ecuador used this mechanism for support. Could you explain the benefits and how could you implement this mechanism?
Gracias, Janet.
Thank you, Janet. Yes, in effect, in the experience of Ecuador, Ecuador thanked us for activating this mechanism. For a specific reason, we were able to concentrate the aid of European countries, which is a bit fake because in reality, the mechanism has more than the European countries. It's got 34 countries. So we've been able to channel this aid with a single mechanism and with just one person that will connect with the country's risk system. We facilitate crisis management in the country. There's no time with meetings wasted. In this case, it wasn't 34 countries, but at least 12 countries that responded through this mechanism. And I know there was an interest by Ecuador trying to have something similar at the Latin American level, or Latin America and the Caribbean. And this allows to channel these resources in the case of mutual assistance within the countries of the region. Thank you very much, Alexis. Maybe you could expand a bit in your presentation around the significance of having these teams ready and trained for assessing damage. There's a need for recovery and formulation of plans of recovery post-disaster. Thank you very much, Janet. That's very important because resources are very limited always. And what do we have now? We have a tool that isn't expensive in terms of implementing it because it's just developing an application that can be done with the technology department with the ministry that's responsible for capturing information, having space in the server where we don't require a server for this. What we are doing, we have a server in the Ministry of the Economy, but at the same time we're going to put this on the cloud. We're going to hire space to have this. What this tool allows is that we are going to create a database based on the impact of the phenomenon on a specific infrastructure. If a road suffers an impact in a certain portion every certain time, then it's obvious that we have to change the route. If there's a school where there's any issue, we could transfer this school to a place that's more resilient. This allows for us to have more accurate planning on the impact that disasters have per sector. Traditionally, when you didn't have the tool, as you said, so what was the major impact in the infrastructure sector? The resources would go to the Ministry of Public Works. Now we have it segmented, and we need to know, and we can know the impact in the infrastructure for the Ministry of Public Works and also for the Ministry of Health, Education, Agriculture, and we don't have a Ministry of Housing because we are a national housing institute, and we can know how to plan public investment and the budgetary reallocation for these events. Thank you very much, Alexis. Now we'll hand the floor to the questions in the audience. We've received several questions. Of course, Carlos Iván Márquez has asked many questions. There are some questions that I would like to select. We don't have much time. Some of the questions are related to the capacity and how to generate capacities at the local level, how to make the local governments use the standards that exist.
Bien, esa pregunta es importante.
This question is important in the sense of the supplementary nature. Our law talks about key elements as principles. Some are the local capacities, the other is the supplementary nature and subsidies. In that sense, capabilities have been organized through institutionality for knowledge and risk reduction. We've got committees that come from the municipal council to analyze threats, vulnerabilities, and risk. This is an important component in planning. In terms of response, we have the committees but of response, and we've generated an interinstitutional capacity which is under the protocols and common trainings, and strengthening strategic points that are related to logistics centers. In Colombia, we are reaching 10 regional logistics centers with something that is key, and it's permanent connectivity. When a municipality or a region overpasses its capacity of response, it's immediately supplemented by the department and, if necessary, by the nation. In this sense, we should have an immediate reaction with something that's key. The private sector in Colombia is working strongly on this. We have agreements with the private sector, and the community is acting, and we're trying to see that the community is as a first responder, part of the process as a subject and not object. In certain opportunities, the community is looking into the first evacuation under mechanisms that we've worked on. But along those lines, we've been progressing, and I must express that this is a process. These are not specific actions, but this is a process, and the process is continuous, and this cannot stop. Along the same lines, for Ricardo, how do we apply the policies and the technology at a local level when there is an issue in human resources? And mostly, some colleagues are saying, how do we have the active participation of the private sector in these efforts? I think that's one of the major changes we've seen. We have to understand that when we face the state structure, the community level is the most affected one. And we also have to have clarity on the fact that all of those who participate in an emergency, they're not victims. They're also responsible for facing an emergency. Undoubtedly, in those that are classified as the most vulnerable, where we have to have more attention and where we have to channel the assistance in the public-private world. I would like to see something that maybe hasn't been mentioned. The academic world is key. There is a series of studies that are oriented and that are integrated to supplement what was required. Therefore, this is a case by case, and it's a need to understand that those who are affected first are the communities, and if they don't have clarity on what they need to be supported, then how can we channel public-private aid for that sector? And how does the academic world to develop? And how can we use this as quick as possible to minimize the effect of risk where this community can be submitted? In addition to what they mentioned on the preparation of these communities with evacuation exercises, with preparation of community matters to see how to face an emergency. This is a question for Tania. What are the strategic alliances that contribute to what you do at a community level? And how are you making some groups visible, like those that are disabled and other indigenous groups, etc., in these capacity strengthening processes? To say that this comes from a very specific sector in these communities, for example, through local emergency committees, and the water groups or organizations of women, and also involving the experience that has been an initiative taken by local stakeholders to Honduras Green Cross. And in that sense, the areas of incidence that we are addressing at this point are related to our actions in different projects in the civil society organizations global network to reduce risk of in disasters. Through first line action, we knew about cities where we didn't have any presence or a base, and they saw all of the work that was done with Cruz Verde in Honduras at a certain point, and there we can think that we can make an effort of incorporating a Cruz Verde office in these communities. That's why we should see that the alliances have allowed to see an effort and install these offices in certain communities. And we have around 8 offices that will be opened. We're taking them with the government and with the different collaborators. We have an initiative where we are responding positively, and we have our attention in areas where there generally isn't an organization of first responders, and we are responding to be able to process all of the economic resources that are needed to install other bases.
Okay, Tania, thank you. This question is for Alexis. And it says, okay, the moments after the impact of a disaster are critical from the social point of view. Therefore, the rehabilitation of basic services for those impacted is essential. Can you give us detail on this impact in terms of the tools that you use in the Dominican Republic regarding water, medical services, food, and so forth? Okay, with the tools we immediately get the information that comes through the Ministry of Economy as well as through the Emergency Operations Committee. Traditionally, we also got the information by means of a data sheet. We've actually standardized all of those data sheets, and that has allowed for information to flow faster and also for information to be processed. We can manage all of the information coming through because we can actually establish that on an Excel sheet and work on it. Now, specifically regarding the question, the healthcare sector, so all the volunteers who get the information that comes through our Ministry of Economy from the Operational Emergency Committee, as well as the person enabled from the Ministry of Health, they can identify what the damage is in terms of hospitals, maybe the biggest urgency they need to address regarding the population that is being taken care of. And that allows for the Ministry of Economy, through any request for resources, may act faster in terms of budget allocation. The same thing happens with housing, education, and other sectors. In any case, it is clear that if a hospital has been badly affected and the population cannot be taken care of, then there are some transfer mechanisms where the Operational Emergency Committee can actually raise indicators through the protocol they've established for that kind of a situation. Okay, Alexis, finally, Joslan, from your experience in terms of cooperation in Latin America, how can we strengthen bilateral exchanges between countries so that lessons learned from other countries can actually be quickly implemented in other neighboring countries in the region?
Bueno, no sé si tenemos la
I don't
solución,
know if
pero
there is a solution, but our willingness is effectively to support these regional mechanisms, because from Europe we can see the added value of having the instrument, and we can see that within the context of preparing or crisis management or data management, and it has an added value that invites us to effectively promote these kinds of mechanisms and take ownership of those mechanisms. It is a discussion that we have with our civil protection colleagues in Europe, and they are very open to looking at the kind of support that's been given so far on the level of regional organizations for disaster risk reduction, to look at all of these dimensions by the Coordination Center for Response in the EU. Okay, thank you so much, all of the panel members. I would like to simply take some of the conclusions, the most important conclusions for this session. Many of the participants have insisted on the importance of getting solid legal frameworks and institutional frameworks where we can work in a coordinated manner from the national level down to a local level. Intersector work is critical, and the same thing goes to the work done in the different territories incorporating communities. There is the vision and perception of communities in these processes of readiness for emergency and recovery. It is important to have protocols, and those protocols should be well informed for the community and all the stakeholders involved in these processes, so that when it comes to an emergency, so that when we try to do recovery planning, there is a harmonized process, a coordinated response among the various stakeholders. The management of emergencies and recovery can be done before the disaster. We can work in a coordinated manner with other organisms and important members such as the ministers of finances, planning offices, sector offices, communities, in order to undertake these processes of preparation long term, of course based on information, clear information that may account for the situation of threats, vulnerabilities, and risks. So we need to work on the basis of scenarios of potential damage so that we can fully dimension the size of emergencies, and we can dimension the size of recovery processes, so that we can also estimate the cost for recovery, and the mechanisms of implementation for those processes.
Finalmente, es importante hacer estos entrenamientos.
Finally, it is important to do all this training and the drills with the communities, because they have to be well informed and see how they should proceed in complex situations. I believe I'm going to stop at that. These are the main points, and I thank you so much for your attendance, and the panel members for contributing to the knowledge and experience. Thank you.